DND number 13, For Unto Us in Jesus' Name, chapter 13. It's December 10th, Tuesday evening, Hopewood Chapel, Huntington Beach, California. Melody slept in the office chair for all of 10 minutes. She felt hot and stuffy, but she couldn't go back outside because Logan would be all worried about her. She looked around the office to entertain herself. She knew the computer and large monitor was new. Grandmaster Kino had seen to that. But there were stacks of papers everywhere and file folders. A secretary or assistant or something like that was desperately needed. She went to the desk and thumbed through a thick handwritten book of sermons, and she picked it up and looked closer. This book was from 1987. Reverently, she placed it back down and headed out of the office. She walked up the hallway, but instead of turning right to go through the vestibule to the outside, she turned left and went into the chapel. It was quiet and cool. It had a nice feeling to it. Reverent, she guessed. The beautiful stained glass had a lot to do with that. Melody made her way down the aisle. She smiled because it was perfectly symmetrical. While some churches had a central seating area with 2 aisles, one on either side, and then smaller seating areas on the far left and right, if a bride were to walk down the aisle in those kinds of churches, it wouldn't be the center. In churches like this one, there was one aisle, right down the center, and then very small aisles on either side between the walls and the pews. For just a moment, she allowed herself to pretend to be walking down the aisle on her father's arm, looking ahead to the handsome guy waiting for her at the front of the chapel. She smiled. Shaking her head, she snapped out of the fantasy and slipped into a pew on the right, about halfway down. She sat and stared up at the beautiful stained glass window. The scene with Jesus surrounded by children was well done and had always made her feel peaceful. It was like the children could see the light of the Savior easier than everyone else. She sighed. Her head was aching. Maybe she actually was getting sick. Folding Logan's jacket, she placed it on the bench and laid her head down on it, and her eyes drifted shut. Only a few minutes later, she was awakened by voices. It sounded like angry voices, and one of those voices she recognized. It was Bristol's boyfriend, Banny. She didn't recognize the other voice. It was Banny who was angry. "I told you not to take that much. You're going to get us all caught. Only a few hundred at a time." "Sorry, man, but who put you in charge?" "Me, since I'm the one who recognized the opportunity. All these old people with their houses filled with jewelry, real gold jewelry, and stashes of cash money in their closets and attics. But we got to play it smart, you idiot. You don't take more than a few hundred at a time right now, and you get in good with the ones who are getting ready to kick it and let them leave you all they have." "I'm working on that, but I don't have the advantage you have." "Well, that sucks for you, but Bristol's my ticket. I marry her, her grandmother will leave her everything, the house, the life insurance, the cash. Then get rid of her. It's almost too freaking easy. So keep playing your part, man. And don't get carried away where you get caught. There are millions of dollars of cash and assets to be made out of the almost 30 grandmas who are hanging on. Be patient." "Yeah, but how many of those grandmas intend to give all of their assets to this stupid church?" "Well, you got to play it well, man. You got to make them think they're helping you with no one else has ever done anything for you during your entire life. Tell them sob stories. They'll help you because they want to go to heaven." Both guys laughed. "Now get out of here," Banny said, "before anyone comes snooping around." Melody didn't know what to do. It got quiet, but did they both leave? She thought she heard footsteps. Someone was coming down the aisle. She closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. She heard him slap the benches as he walked past them. He was definitely coming down the aisle. Her heart pounded. The footsteps stopped, and she kept her eyes closed, but knew he was right there, beside her bench. She heard him breathe out a breath, could feel him draw closer and bend down over her. "Well, what have we here?" he mumbled. She wasn't sure if she should act like he woke her up or not. Deciding to keep pretending to sleep, she willed her breathing to slow and her heart to calm. "Must be my lucky day," he said softly. He put his hand on her thigh, and Melody stirred and opened her eyes and pretended to come to awareness and sat up. "Oh, Oh, my goodness, I must have fallen asleep. She looked up at the guy. Banny, what are you doing here? The question is, what are you doing here? I wasn't feeling well. Logan told me to come in the church and rest. I guess I fell asleep. Is everyone gone? She asked as she started to stand up, but he grabbed her arm and pulled her back down. You were sound asleep? Apparently. He rubbed his hand up and down her arm. You know, you are one gorgeous baby. How'd you get to be friends with Bristol? Her brow furrowed in confusion. You already know. We went to school together. Yeah, but pretty girls like you don't make friends with Panjit girls. Panjit? Ugly. Melody drew a breath. Ugly? Bristol's not ugly. Are you blind? She's a beautiful Filipino girl. Yeah, but that's what makes her Panjit. The Filipino part. You are horrible. You are Filipino. He touched her arm with a smile. I like pretty white girls. Melody tried to stand, but he grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her down again. Don't go getting all crazy on me. I just want to talk to you, get to know you a little better. Well, I don't think I want to talk to you, and I know all I want to know. Aw, come on now. We don't have to tell Bristol that I think you're pretty. It would hurt her feelings. And Panjit or not, I'm going to ask Bristol to marry me, and that's the only marriage proposal she's ever going to get. But you'll probably get a lot of proposals, though it may not be marriage that they be proposing. You and me, we could just be having some fun like that. Well, you think mighty highly of yourself, Benoy. I wouldn't give you the time of day. Now let go of me. She stood, but he grabbed her hand. Fine, go on then. But don't say anything to Bristol, 'cause all you're going to do is break her heart. She jerked her hand away. He stood and moved close. And you'd better watch the attitude. She glared at him. You're the one who'd better watch it. You obviously have no idea who you're dealing with. What you gonna do? Go run into your little canary boyfriend? What do you think he's gonna do? She laughed. You're an idiot, you know that? He grabbed her wrist and she immediately threw a chop to his throat with her other hand and took off. He choked. It took him a few seconds to regain his composure, and then he went after her. The chapel doors opened and Logan and Bristol came in together. There you are, Bristol said. Melody hurried up to stand next to Logan. Logan smiled at her. What's going on? I came in to check to make sure no one was here before we lock up the doors, and I saw Miss Melody sleeping on the bench, so I woke her up. Logan looked at Melody. How are you feeling? Not so good. Well, let's get you home. Melody nodded and she waved at her friend. Bye, Bristol. Bye, Mel. Feel better. Thanks. Logan nodded at Benoy. See you two later, and you don't have to worry about checking out the church because we have security that's going to do that and lock up. Oh. Well, Reverend Clark always asked me to do whenever I was here. Let me try that again. Oh, well, Reverend Clark always asked me to do that whenever I was here. Well, that won't be necessary anymore, Logan said with a smile. We have it covered. He watched Benoy's face, getting the information he wanted to know. Banny thought of himself in charge of this place. He'd been trusted and given free rein. He thought he was in charge. He'd taken ownership in his own mind. Logan escorted Melody out of the church. You're shaking, baby. You really are sick, aren't you? Logan, I need to talk to you. Okay. Outside, only a few security agents remained, along with young Eric and Jordan and JoJo. They stood out front on the sidewalk, looking up at the decorated trees and taking in the vast changes between what they'd seen only 2 days ago and now. Logan and Melody joined them and turned to look up at the church. Looks great, doesn't it? Jordan asked. They all nodded. It does, JoJo agreed. Very Christmassy and inviting. How you feeling, Mel? Jordan asked. Logan said you're sick. I feel pretty bad, actually. Well, let's leave your car here and I'll take you home, Logan offered. Actually, no, Melody said as she watched Banny and Bristol come down the steps of the church. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Say goodbye to Bristol and Banny first, she said in a whisper. Well, good night again, Bristol, Melody said. Bristol smiled. Good night, Mel. Good night, you guys. Thanks so much, all of you, for all the hard work and effort. My grandmother is tickled pink. It's our pleasure, Logan said. Really. I mean, it's lots of fun making this happen. Good night, everyone, Banny said quickly and turned Bristol toward the parking lot. The group stood and watched them leave. As soon as they were out of sight, they all turned to Melody. What's going on? Logan asked. Melody looked up at him as tears formed in her eyes. He came on to me in the chapel. Banny? Young Eric asked. Melody nodded. I had to do a throat chop to make him let me go. He said I was pretty and Bristol was ugly, and there was no reason why he and I shouldn't get to know each other better, and he wasn't talking about some polite conversation. Logan turned toward the parking lot as if he was about to go after him, but Melody put a hand on his shoulder. Don't. Not yet, anyway. There's more to it. He turned back to her. Go on. We need a meeting with, like, your dad, and I guess your Uncle Joey. She went on to try to tell him what she'd overheard. She finished with, and so I was thinking, you probably want him to think that I didn't hear it, and Ameritech probably wants to, like, set a trap for him or something, or the police, or someone. I mean, he sounded like he's planning to murder Bristol. Young Eric pulled out his phone and placed a call and put it on speaker. What's up, kiddo? His Uncle Joey said. You guys wired this place up, right? Yes. Why? Do we have audio too? Well, not outside. How about in the chapel? Yes. Why? Can you access it now? Yes. Why, Eric? He quickly filled him in on what Melody told them. Okay, I'm on it, Joey said. We'll need to act quickly, put things in place. Looks like I won't be getting any sleep tonight. Do you know what car he drives or his address? I don't know an address, but I know he drives a red Kia Soul. Okay, that'll help. I'll pick up the plate on the parking lot cam. I don't want Mel alone tonight. Her whole family will be with her. No, I want her with Benoit. I want her where Benoit can't find her. Logan can take her to his house. Yes, that's better. And I'm going to give her father a call right now and tell him what's going on and make sure they're locked up tight. Because if Banny suspects for 1 second that she actually heard him, he'll try to silence her. I'm going to put a man to watch over her family tonight just in case. Thanks, Uncle Joey. Yep. Tell Logan to go straight home and tell his dad and let him know that I'll be in touch shortly with the video footage. Oh, you're on speaker, so he heard you. Joey sighed. Eric. Always tell me that up front. What I said might have scared Melody. Sorry. Logan had his arm around Melody and squeezed her tighter. It's going to be okay, he whispered. Young Eric ended the call and nodded at everyone. Let's get out of here. I'm sorry, everyone, Melody said. JoJo smiled at her. Melody, our entire family has come together to work on this amazing project. We wanted to do it, and we all know that when we do something like this, when we try to do something good on a larger scale, the enemy is going to try to stop us. We didn't expect we'd just step in, renovate a church, help out the community, and no one would stand in our way. It doesn't go smoothly because the dark forces move in. The same thing happened in Pine Forest a few weeks ago at Thanksgiving. But don't worry, we're stronger than them. And don't apologize for God using you to bring about changes for all of these people. He used you to save Bristol's life, to help these old folks, to help the people in those apartments and all those people who came to help decorate a Christmas tree tonight. He's using you. Don't apologize. She sighed and smiled. Thanks, JoJo. He'd make a good preacher, wouldn't he? Logan said with a smile. He would, young Eric agreed. You guys stay here with Mel while I go get the car, Logan said. He turned and ran to his car, scanning the parking lot to make sure Banny had left, then drove to the front of the church and picked up Melody. Young Eric put her in the car and closed the door. Thanks, Eric. Jordan, see you later. JoJo, see you at home. They waved and he took off, glancing over at Melody. She seemed to be shivering, so he reached over and turned on the heat. I'm sorry such a nice evening was ruined, and I'm sorry you're not feeling well. Me too, she said softly. Call Aunt Jeffy, Logan said. Jeffy answered on the first ring. Hey, sweetie. Hey, Aunt Jeffy, I hate to bother you, but can you do one of those remote things where you can tell what's wrong with Melody? I can, and I was expecting your call. She was quiet a few seconds. Melody, are you having trouble breathing? Melody drew a deep breath. Maybe. My chest feels a little tight. Have you been coughing? No, ma'am. I mean, not really. Every once in a while. Headache? Yes, ma'am. Body aches? Yes, ma'am. I ache all over right now. Okay. No sniffles? No, ma'am. Jeffy sighed. I need to come and examine you tomorrow. You need to stay home tonight. Stay in bed. What are you thinking it is, Aunt Jeffy? Logan asked. Probably just the flu. I'll call your mom and tell her what to give you tonight. She has some of my special stuff. You need to rest. It's important. Your body is worn out. Tell me about it, Melody murmured. Am I contagious? Yes. So Logan kissed me today. I mean, like, several times. Of course he did. Don't worry. We'll take care of him, too. But I'm not coughing or sneezing, Melody said. Don't you usually cough and sneeze with the flu? Usually, but not always. Melody sighed. They made it to the Adams home. Logan helped Melody into the house, and his mom took over. Hello, Melody, poor thing. Come with me upstairs. I'm going to put you in the guest room. I have some pajamas for you, and I'm making some tea for you, and there are some capsules to take. Logan smiled at her and gave a small wave. Good night, Mel. I'll come in and check on you later. She frowned. Good night. Now, I've spoken with your mom, Melody. Don't worry about your family. They are being watched over, Bella said. Logan watched them go upstairs and was standing there as JoJo came in the house. How's she doing? Well, Aunt Jeffy thinks it could be the flu. Mom's taking care of her right now. Boys, Mark Adams said, come into the office a minute. Logan and JoJo followed their father into his office. First, I guess you're going to want to see the video footage of what took place in the chapel. They took a seat and looked up at the large monitor. They watched Melody enter the chapel, take a seat, and sit quietly. After about 5 minutes, she laid down. Then Mark fast-forwarded about 10 minutes, and they watched as a guy in a brown sweater that they didn't know entered the chapel, followed closely by Benoit. He showed Benoit a gray pouch, pulled out a stack of money, and laughed about how much it was. Benoit smacked the guy upside the head and yelled at him. They watched the rest of the exchange, and when Mark turned the video off, they sat in silence for a few moments. I guess he doesn't know that the canary boyfriend could take him out in a few seconds, JoJo said. Logan nodded. I have a feeling he's going to find that out. Here's the thing, Mark said. There's more than these two. This Benoit character said, you'll get us all caught. It makes me wonder just how many there are. So what's the plan of action, JoJo asked. They're going to bug Benoit's car and home. They're going to listen to his phone calls. Well, he spends a lot of time at the Palma house, Logan offered. Mark nodded. We'll get a camera in there. It won't take long for us to bring this little group down. They don't rank real high in intelligence. I mean, if he wanted to remain incognito, why would he come on to Melody like that? I think he was pushing to see if she heard anything, Logan said. Mark nodded. I think so too. But it was not a very bright way to find out because he showed not all but a part of his hand. Anyway, Joey's on it. They'll collect evidence and let the cops make the arrest. Hopefully they'll get them all. Well, Bristol will have to be told, and it's going to crush her, Logan said. Mark nodded. It's going to hurt, but we got to rip that Band-Aid off. And then she's got to be a good enough actress to go along with it for a while. Who's going to tell her? Well, your granddad has an appointment with Bristol early in the morning. He's volunteered to be the one. Why does Granddad have an appointment with Bristol? He was going to talk to her about possibly becoming the secretary and accountant for the church. They're going to pay for her schooling to become a CPA and pay her to do the job at the church, and she won't have to work 2 jobs anymore, and her income will double. Logan nodded. Well, that's really going to help her out. Mark nodded. Yes, and if anyone can help her through what she's facing, it's Eric. Okay, so you guys need to get some sleep. Don't forget M in the morning. Dad, how could we forget M? JoJo said. Well, I just want to make sure you get up to help with the decorating. Your mom is running around taking care of business, and she is 4 months pregnant. Well, that means she's healthy and feeling good, right? Logan asked. Mark smiled. That means she's wearing herself out. Please do whatever you can to ease her burden. Oh, you got it, Dad. Good. So good night, boys. Night, they said as they turned. And guys, way to act quickly on this thing. You guys know I love you, right? Well, we don't feel left out, JoJo said quickly with a grin. Mark smiled. Good night. Logan chuckled, and he and JoJo headed upstairs. Their mom was just coming out of the guest bedroom. How's she doing? Logan asked. Well, I've given her something for her fever and some tea to help her sleep. What was her temp? 102.9. Well, that's pretty high, huh? Bella nodded. It should start coming down now. She's spoken to her mother because she was worried about her family, and she assured her mother that she was fine. I think she's feeling alone or afraid. Well, she must know she's safe here, JoJo said. Bella smiled and looked at Logan. Still, she's in a strange home, in a strange bed. Why don't you go in and spend a few minutes with her? Oh, I intended to do that. Bella put her hand on her abdomen and sighed. Mom, JoJo said quickly, you go to bed. She frowned. I wanted to get the decorations up for Emily's birthday breakfast. Logan and I are going to take care of that, we promise. You can depend on us. Now go to bed. Please, Mom. She sighed and nodded. JoJo ushered her into the room and turned to Logan. Night, Logan. Night, Joe. Logan quietly eased into the room and walked softly to the bed. He looked down at the sleeping girl. Her cheeks and lips were pink from the fever. He touched his hand to her forehead. It was still very warm. Her eyes blinked open, and he smiled at her. Hey, Mel. Hi. How you feeling, baby? She smiled at the endearment. Not great right now. I'm sorry I got sick. Well, you should be, and don't ever let it happen again. She sighed. Is there anything I can do for you? She thought. Well, there is only one thing, but I feel silly asking you. Ask. Whatever you need. Whatever can bring you comfort, I'll do it. Will you sing to me? He smiled. She'd surprised him. Will that really help you? When you sing, it makes me relax. It makes me feel warm and all fuzzy. I could listen to you sing forever. Well, that's good to hear. Yes, it is, she said with a giggle. He gave a soft laugh. So, what would you like to hear? You choose. He thought a minute. Well, before I sing to you, I thought we might want to talk about something that happened today. She frowned. Okay. He smiled. Earlier today, I just blurted out that I was totally in love with you. She smiled. I know. I'll never forget that you said that. Good, but I mean, that's not how I expected to finally say those words to you. Oh, how did you expect to say them? Well, something a little more romantic, like over a candlelit dinner or something. But I couldn't contain myself. It just slipped out. And anyway, you said you feel the same way, so I just wanted to confirm it. Confirm that I feel the same way? Yes, I mean, like, you didn't just say that because I caught you off guard, right? Right. I said it because I do feel the same way. I'm in love with you, Logan. I'm totally in love with you. I was thinking that it's just me being young and naive, falling for a cute guy who sings like an angel and is strong and powerful. But Logan, everything you do, everything you say, I fall more in love with you every day. Even you coming in here tonight to check on me. I can't believe I'm so lucky as to have someone as awesome as you be interested in little old me. Little old you, Melody. You are so beautiful and so kind and so smart and quick-witted and faithful and easygoing, good with children, fun to be around. You are everything I could ever want in a girl and never thought I'd find. And here you are, right in front of me, right here. I'm so grateful to God that you came into my life. I'm so grateful. And I meant what I said. I love you, Melody. I know we haven't been together very long, but it just seems right to me. To me too, she said. I keep thinking that it's too soon to feel this way, but then I see young Eric and Jordan, and they say when it's right, it's right. When you know, you know. And I think I know. And I do too, Logan said. She smiled. Well, isn't this nice? If only I weren't sick, you could seal this with a kiss. He stroked his hand over her hair. Instead, I'll grant your request and close your eyes. Relax. Get well. She closed her eyes and he began to sing a song he'd written about them. about singing a melody and loving the tune. She opened her eyes. That's about us? You wrote that? He smiled. Yes, and it's going to be a big hit one day. Now close your eyes and sleep, baby. She closed her eyes and listened to him sing. It was so lovely, so comforting. Logan watched her as she drifted off. When he was sure she was sleeping, he stopped singing and tucked the blanket up under her chin. Then he placed his hand on her head and began to pray. He thanked God for her. He pled the blood of Jesus over her. He commanded her body to heal in Jesus' name. And he asked God to protect her and her family. He didn't know that Melody was not asleep, and she could hear all that he said. His words touched her more than any I love yous could. They were the words of a young man deeply in love, words bestowed upon her, and the tears ran down her cheeks. New scene. It's December 11th, 7 a.m., Wednesday morning, Mark Adams' home, Newport Beach, California. Melody woke when a soft hand touched her cheek. She opened her eyes and stared into the blue eyes of a little girl. Blinking to focus, Melody smiled. Well, hello there, Emily, she whispered. Hi, Melody. Why did you sleep here? I had to have a long talk with Logan, but also, sweetie, I'm sick. So maybe you need to go find your mommy and not be near me. I won't get sick. I never get sick. My brother's your boyfriend, right? Melody smiled. Yes, he is. He told me. Do you like him? Oh, yes, very much. So, Miss Emily, may I tell you happy birthday? She grinned, but then frowned. I'm not going to have a party today. We too busy. So I have to wait for Sunday when we have a party at Grandma's house. Oh, I see. How many days to Sunday? She asked with a little pout. Sunday is 5 days away. Emily frowned. So I heard that you're now 4 years old. Is that true? Emily nodded her head. It just can't be true. I thought you were only 2. Emily giggled. No, I'm not 2. But Angelina is, and Noah is, and Nate, and Manny, and Abe. Oh, and Ledger. And Iris used to be 2, but she had a birthday party yesterday, but I couldn't go. Oh, I'm so sorry that you didn't get to go. Yeah, she lives really far away, in Georgia. But me and Fia and Kel and Ledger FaceTimed her yesterday. Oh, I'm so glad you did that. It probably made her feel really special that you took time to call her. Emily thought about that and nodded her head. I think so, 'cause she said thank you about 100 times. Melody smiled. Of course she did. What you got there under your arm? It's my new book. I love it. Sophia and Aunt Breeze made the pictures. Oh, may I see it? Emily nodded and handed the book to her. Melody smiled at the beautiful cover art, a little girl in a pretty dress holding a gift bag in her hand as she walked down the sidewalk. In the background were houses with flowers and trees and a dog and a cat and people waving, all done in lovely colors, bright and beautiful. This is so nice, Melody said as she ran her fingers over the glossy cover. Will you read it to me? Oh, well, sweetie, I don't think you should stay in here with me because I'm sick. Well, what's wrong? You don't act sick. You don't talk sick. Melody thought about that. She also didn't feel sick. No headache, no fever or chills, no coughing or runny nose, no aches or pains. Well, actually, nothing is wrong right now. But I was sick last night and I don't want you to get sick from me. Emily giggled. How can I get sick from you when you aren't even sick? Melody laughed. Good question. So, where's your mommy? I think she's making breakfast 'cause I can smell it. Melody sighed. The breakfast party for Emily was supposed to be a surprise, but they probably don't realize that she's awake. Will you read the book with me? Okay, sweetie. You talked me into it. Emily climbed up in the bed, and Melody sat up with her back against the headboard, and Emily immediately crawled into her lap. Melody opened the book and read. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was almost always such a sweet little girl. New scene. While JoJo waited downstairs, Mark and Bella came upstairs to wake their sweet girl, and Logan came upstairs to check on his girl. Logan motioned to his parents with a finger to his lips and pointed into the guest bedroom. The three stood at the doorway listening to Melody read to Emily, and Logan pulled out his phone and videoed. And Jesus was the greatest gift of all, Melody finished and sighed. That was a wonderful story. Did you like it? Emily nodded her head. I love it. I read it a lot of times with Mommy and Daddy and Logan and JoJo, and it's okay that this story is about Iris because soon there is going to be another book about two little girls named Emily and Kelston, and that's really about me and my cousin Kelston because we are the same age, and Kel is going to be 4 in 5 more days, so I'm older than her, but not very much older than her, and she's my best friend even though we're cousins, and we are mommies. And our mommies are sisters, and our fathers are brothers, and we are a very close family. Logan couldn't stop the laugh, and Melody and Emily looked over at the door. Hey, you guys, Emily said. You snuck up on us, she said in her sweet munchkin voice. Logan, Mark, and Bella came into the room. Yes, Bella said. I came up to wake you and didn't find you in your bed. Did you think I was lost? Emily asked as if she hoped it was true. No, I thought you'd gone into my room. I came to see Melody. I see that, Logan said. His eyes shifted to the girl spoken of. Hey, Mel, how you feeling this morning? She smiled. I actually feel really good. Not sick at all. He smiled. Good. People say that Aunt Jeffy's meds seem to get rid of most anything within 24 hours. She's amazing. I'm beginning to understand why the big pharma people tried to shut her up. Well, Mark began, let's get you dressed, Emily, and have some breakfast. She nodded and ran off with her parents. Logan smiled. Mel, you're invited too, but you don't have to get dressed. You can wear those cute sweatpants and my old t-shirt all day if you want. Well, this is your shirt? Yeah, it's too small for me, and my mom likes to wear my old t-shirts to bed because she thinks they're comfortable. Melody nodded and ran her hand over the front of the shirt. It is. It's soft. Yep, I wear them down pretty good. So hurry and get up so you can be down there before Emily. I guess I'll just wear this because I don't think there's time for me to dress. Get out of here so I can go use the bathroom. Yes, ma'am. A few minutes later, Bella, Logan, Melody, and JoJo sat at the kitchen table, waiting and watching for Emily to come downstairs with her daddy. Balloons and streamers were everywhere. A pretty white lace tablecloth covered the table with a huge happy birthday centerpiece in the middle and colorful plates and napkins. There was a birthday cake with candles on the table, but they weren't going to cut it this morning. There were also chocolate breakfast muffins, one with 4 candles for each year of her life so far, and a 5th candle to grow on. Logan volunteered to video, and JoJo was doing a group FaceTime with the rest of the family. He had Ricky, Bree, young Eric and Taylor, Grandma, all 5 of her little ones, Aunt Breeze, Sophia, Kelston, Ledger, Lizzie, Gabe, and finally, Iris. Everyone watched as Emily headed into the kitchen. She was talking a mile a minute with her daddy and looking up at him. He stopped walking, and Em turned slowly, her eyes opening wide, a huge smile spreading across her face, and she started clapping her hands and jumping up and down. Happy birthday, Emily, everyone shouted together. She laughed and clapped and then stopped, and her expression completely changed. She put her hands to her face and covered it, and the next thing everyone knew, she was wailing. Mark knelt down to her. What's the matter, sweetheart? Nothing is the matter, Daddy. I'm just so happy. It made me cry. Oh, sweetie, Bella said, stretching out her arms. Little Em ran to her mommy and snuggled against her. Logan looked down at Melody. She was crying too. He laughed. Em, JoJo said, your cousins and Grandma and Aunt Breeze and Uncle Ricky and Aunt Bree and young Eric and Taylor and Gabe and Iris are all on FaceTime. Emily looked at JoJo's phone and grinned. Thank you, everyone. And then she remembered her book. Thank you all so much for surprising me. It's making me really, really happy. And look at all the good stuff, she said, pointing at the table and the balloons. Thank you, Mommy. Thank you, Daddy. She ran to hug them each. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, JoJo. Thank you, Melody. She looked up after hugging them all. Thank you all so much. I think this is going to be a very happy day. They laughed. Let's eat some breakfast, Logan said. I have a class this morning. Well, before we eat, Mark said, there are a few things we need to do. Emily turned her big eyes up to her father. See that big thing in the corner over there with the blue blanket over it? Emily nodded. Go pull the blanket off, he said. Emily jumped up and down as she moved over to the corner of the breakfast room near the back door. She grabbed the edge of the blanket and pulled it off the object by backing up several steps, and her eyes opened wide. She took huge gasps of breath. Oh, oh, look, a dollhouse. For me? No, it's for me, JoJo said, but I'm going to let you play with it. Emily giggled. She was used to her brothers teasing her. She moved toward it reverently and touched the large wooden house that was taller than her. She slowly looked it over, softly touching a chair and a bed and a table. She turned around, her eyes aglow. I love it so much. I love it so much. Thank you so much. She looked at JoJo's phone. Kebble, are you still there? She asked, using her version of Kelson's nickname, which was Kelbell. JoJo nodded. She is? I hope you will come over and play with me. It was Aunt Breeze who answered. We'll be over later, sweetie. Emily clapped her hands. I wish I could come, Iris said loudly. Me too, Gabe said softly. And now, Bella began, we just need to light these muffin candles and sing happy birthday and bless the food. Mark lit the candles, everyone sang, Emily said the blessing, everyone gobbled up the delicious breakfast. It was a beautiful beginning to a very happy day, at least for some. New scene, December 11th, 8 a.m. Wednesday morning, Hopewood Chapel, Huntington Beach, California. Good morning, Grandmaster Kino, Bristol said with a smile as she entered the office of the Hopewood Chapel Church of Christ. Eric smiled kindly at her. He felt immense compassion for her, and he knew her smile would be gone very soon. Good morning, Bristol. Thank you so much for coming in for this meeting. Well, I have to say I'm really curious about what this is all about. He nodded. Well, I'll tell you what the meeting was originally about while we wait for Reverend Clark and your grandmother to arrive. What? Grandma's coming? He nodded. Yes, I have someone picking her up, but until they get here, I'll tell you what this meeting was about. He smiled and gestured toward the big chair. Please have a seat. She sat down nervously. Bristol, I understand you want to go to school and get an accounting degree. Is that true? Yes, and get my CPA license. And Melody tells me that you have a very efficient mind and knack for organization. She smiled and nodded. Yes, sir. Clutter bothers me. It's a thing I have. He smiled and gestured around the office. And so, this office must be a nightmare to you. She giggled. It is. But it's also like a giant game I want to play. It wouldn't take much to get this place cleaned up and organized, put in a system to handle everything properly. I don't know how Reverend Clark gets anything done in here. Well, he shouldn't have to do any of that. He needs to concentrate on ministering to his flock and not on writing checks or keeping the power on. He nodded at her. I still am going to make you an offer. She frowned. Well, what can I do to help? I'd be happy to help. Excuse me. Well, that's good, but you can help, and we can also help you. What do you mean? I mean, I would like to pay for your college education, help you get the degree you want, but I also would like to hire you to be the church secretary/accountant. It really won't be any more complicated than running a household. Once you have everything here set up and in order, you wouldn't have to work here full time, so you could attend classes and work on that degree. Her eyes opened wide. Grandmaster Kino, that sounds wonderful, but I have a job that I need to keep because I help pay the bills for my grandmother. He nodded. I understand that, and I commend you for taking care of the woman who took care of you. But I'll pay you a decent salary for the work you do here for the church. I promise it will be more than you're making at the firm you work at currently. More per hour? He smiled at her, appreciating her mind, then immediately went to the details to calculate her odds. No, not more per hour, more period. Whatever you're making at the firm to help pay bills, it will double. Double? Yes, and it will be worth it to me to have someone I trust helping to run this place. You don't trust Reverend Clark? Oh, yes, of course I do, but he can't handle it all. And Bristol, this church, has taken in a lot more money than it has in its coffers. What do you mean? Well, that's the next subject I'm getting to, and why I'm waiting for the Reverend and Mrs. Palma. He smiled. And I think I hear them coming in now. He stood and opened the office door. Hello, Ronnie, and good morning. And thank you for coming on such late notice. Good morning, Christina. I hope you're doing well this morning. She nodded. Eric, it's so nice to see you again. Come in, Eric said. Go ahead and take that seat, Christina, and I'll grab another chair for Bristol. Ronnie, please take the chair behind the desk. And what about you? I'll stand. Eric went down the hall to a classroom and grabbed a folding chair and quickly brought it back to the office. He set it down and motioned for Bristol to sit. He stood in front of the door as they all looked up at him, obviously curious as to why he called them together. He sighed and silently said another prayer and smiled. I won't beat around the bush. I called you in because we have a serious problem. Part of the problem will be solved if Bristol goes to the if Bristol agrees to the offer I just made her. Eyes turned to the young girl. Eric went on to explain the offer he made to Bristol. And so if she agrees to do it, that will be part of the problem solved. So, Bristol, are you going to do it? Christina asked. Bristol nodded. Well, I'd be stupid to turn that down. Eric smiled and then frowned as he faced the next very unpleasant part of the discussion. Now, I'm afraid the next part of the conversation is not so pleasant. I called Christina in to be support for Bristol, and I called Ronnie in because, well, it's his church, and it's the Lord's church, Ronnie put in quickly. Eric nodded, yes. And also Ronnie is going to want to be here for you and also be in on what the plan is to help the situation. He looked at the older man. Ronnie, your church is bringing in more money than you have. My stepson, Mark Adams, and my best friend, Justin Lee, are attorneys at Lee and Adams Law Firm, and they have initiated some preliminary investigations into the church finances, and they have discovered that there have been a lot of cash offerings that have disappeared. In other words, you are being robbed blind. Ronnie frowned. Do you know who the culprit is? We know who one of them is. There is more than one. It's a group. I'm not sure if the others are members of your congregation. I do know that one, the leader, I believe, has recently started going to church here. We have plans in place to find them all. But just stealing money from the church is only part of what is happening. There is a much worse plan in place that has to do with robbing homes, committing fraud against the elderly of your congregation, exploitation, and murder. All of their eyes got big. Eric sighed as he grabbed the remote. I'm going to play a video for you. It's of something that took place in the chapel yesterday evening. Bristol, this affects you the most, which is why I asked Christina to be here with you. It will be upsetting for you to hear this, but we are here for you. Melody was very distraught about telling you about this, but we assured her you would want to know and that you had to know. It will be painful, so brace yourself. She blinked and looked up at the screen on the wall. Eric hit the button and remained still and quiet as the video played. Bristol's mouth opened, her eyes got wide and then filled with tears. Ronnie shook his head, feeling immediately guilty that he had so easily trusted the young man. Christina looked fiercely angry. Eric turned it off, picked up a box of tissues and offered them to Bristol. The room was quiet, and Eric drew a breath. I know it's hard and hurtful. There are probably waves of different emotions hitting you all at the same time. Shock, disappointment, heartache, fear. I'll help you through them, Bristol. She sniffed and wiped at her eyes. It's so hard to believe. He said he has plans to murder me. How could he? Well, there's evil in this world, sweetie. But God knew what was going on, and he prompted Ronnie to be adamant about inviting young people here. He prompted you to invite Melody. He prompted Logan to come along, and now we see that we were not only supposed to help Ronnie, but also we are here to save your life. Does he know that we know? Christina asked. Eric nodded in approval of her question. Good question, Christina. That means you realize that having this disclosure meeting is only the beginning. The answer to your question is no. He doesn't know, and he can't know, not yet. We need him to continue on so that we can gather evidence against him, find out how many others are working with him, and then turn it over to the police, and they'll make the arrest. How will you gather evidence? Ronnie asked. Well, we would like to put surveillance equipment in your home, Christina. plant some money somewhere he hasn't looked yet in your home and here in the church too. We've already put a tracker and a camera in his vehicle. Do you know the other guy he was talking to in the video, Bristol? She nodded. His name is Deuce Perry. I don't know if that's his real first name. He went to my same high school. He graduated a year before me in Melody. I don't know him that well. And I didn't know Banny knew him because Banny is older. How old is Banny? Eric asked. He's 23, she shrugged, unless he's lying about that too. She sniffed back another round of tears. So, Grandmaster Kino, you need me to pretend that I don't know this, right? You need me to act normal with Banny. It's a hard ask. I realize that. But it won't be for long. Do you think you can do it? I'm not sure. Right now, I feel like I'm going to pass out, like I'm in some nightmare and can't wake up. I mean, I thought he loved me. I thought we were going to get married. She broke into sobs. Eric put his arms around her. It seems hard right now, sweetie, Eric said. But you will eventually get over this and find a good man and have a happy life. She shook her head. No, I won't. Because, like he said, I'm ugly. You are not ugly, Christina said quickly. She sniffed. You're my grandma. Of course you're going to say that. You are not ugly, Grandmaster Kino said. You are a beautiful daughter of God, and there is someone waiting out there to meet you, someone who will love you and appreciate you. Bristol, you'll get through this, and you and I will do some work together, some therapy sessions, and you'll see just how worthy you are. Please trust me, and trust God. He sees you. He sent us to rescue you. You are his daughter. Trust him. Bristol wiped her tears. I'm sorry, Bristol. I'm sorry, Christina. I've been so unaware. I trusted this young man, Ronnie said, his already weak voice shaking. Well, he's a good actor. Forgive yourself, Christina said, but I have to say I never felt good about him. Eric smiled. So Jason and Joey at Ameritech are coming up with a detailed plan to catch these guys. We'll work it out and bring you in on it to execute. It probably won't take longer than a week, 2 at the most. Can you hang in there that long, Bristol? I'll try. If you let him know that you know, he could hurt you now, or your grandmother. We already have an agent protecting Melody because if he suspects she hurt him, he'll try to take her out of the picture. Poor Melody, Bristol said. She was probably very upset and not sure whether to tell me or not. She was distraught. She's worried about you. Bristol sighed. Well, you tell her that I'm okay, and I'm glad she told. Eric smiled. I'm proud of you for that. Now, it will only make sense that Melody knows that Banny came on to her, and she would tell you that much. He may even try to bring up the subject with you and discredit her before she can tell you. You can act like you know that she believes he tried to come on to her, but he can't know that Melody heard the other things he said to his friend. Do you understand what I'm saying? Bristol nodded. Yes, sir, I understand. He'll try to explain why he came on to Melody, but I have to be very careful that I don't let on that I know he's stealing and plans to marry me and kill me. She shook her head. Saying it out loud like that, it sounds like a ridiculous plan. Yes, it does. And yet those kinds of plans are carried out every day. The devil is a deceiver, and he gets in these people's heads and makes it sound like a viable plan. To us, in our right minds, we can see just how crazy it is. When is the next time you'll see Benoit? Ronnie asked. I'm supposed to see him tonight after I get off work. He's supposed to come to the house for dinner. She looked up at the clock. Oh, no, I'm going to be late to work. She stood up and shook her head. I really don't feel like I can go into work. I won't be able to concentrate. Can you call in sick? Eric asked. Well, I don't want to lie. And I don't want you to lie. But I'm a doctor, and you may not be physically sick, but you are definitely emotionally ill right now. They don't have to be told what kind of sickness. If you need me to vouch for you, I will. Besides that, when do you think you'll give your notice? Well, when do you want me to start here? He smiled. Tomorrow would be good. Oh, well, I'll see if I can do that, though they may want me to work out a notice. I understand. He turned to Mrs. Palma. Christina, we would like to have Agent Reyes, the one who just picked you up, stay with you. He can pretend to be a yard guy or a plumber or something like that. That would be fine, she said. Always nice to have a good-looking young man hanging around the house. Eric chuckled. Okay then, ladies and Reverend. As soon as Jason... Hold on. Until then, I'll leave you... let's see. As soon as Jason lets us know an exact plan of action, I'll be in touch. Until then, I'll leave you to get ready for this Sunday. Do you think there will be a lot of people here? Bristol asked. Eric nodded. The place will be packed, and there will be a live stream. Ronnie, you're about to be back in business. By the way, later today, there will be a company here called Vid Solutions who will install monitors in the chapel so that all the people will be able to read the words to popular Christian songs and sing along. It's the thing nowadays. Instead of hymnals, it makes it so you can do any song that may not be in the hymnal, and things are changing so quickly from week to week, it's the best way to keep up. Ronnie nodded. Oh, you don't have to explain. I trust you, Eric. Eric nodded. Thank you. So I'm going to head home to check on my wife. She has the kids all alone today because Melody was ill. Oh, yeah, she was running a fever last night. Is she okay? Bristol asked. She says she's much better this morning, but Shelley told her to take the day off and relax. Well, I think that's a good idea. Everyone has been working so hard the past 2 days, Ronnie said. They have indeed, Eric said, and they're happy to do it, and they were all very excited when Logan told them what he wanted to do. That's a fine young man there, Christina put in. Eric nodded. I'm very proud of that young man. And his brother JoJo, Ronnie said, he wants to be a youth minister. I was watching him last night as he interacted with those boys and girls from the apartments. He has a way with them. He's going to be a good one. I've asked him to help me with the sermon this Sunday. Really? Well, that's interesting, and it's a good idea, Eric said. He then turned to Bristol and handed her a card. This is Joey's number. Put it in your phone. And that's my number on the back. Put it in your phone, too. So how are you feeling? She nodded. I'm in shock, I think. My world has just changed in almost every way. But still, for some reason, I don't feel like falling apart. Eric nodded. Good. Though you might feel like it later. How about we have a prayer before I leave? A prayer of protection and to give you peace in your aching heart. She nodded. That would be great. Ronnie, you pray, Eric, please. He nodded, took Bristol's hands in his, bowed his head, and prayed. And that is the end of chapter 13.